3, 2, 1.
Hi everyone, this is Victoria Wolders and welcome to another My Kids Locker Empathy Tale podcast. Today we are going to be doing a story called The Shadow Giants, and this will be a really great one for you and your family and students in the class to listen to. If you have any questions or any ideas for stories, if you'd love to reach out to me, feel free to do that through all the different social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, all the ones that are the major social media platforms. I'd love to hear from you. Our attempt today is to continue to create compassion one story at a time, and that's done through telling stories that I have told my own kids at their bedside. My mother used to tell me stories, but not one was ever recorded. So this is my hope as a mother, a teacher, and as a moonshot thinker to be able to share these stories. I am an educational storyteller, and these are my stories to my children, but also a positive narrative to be sent into the world to hopefully inspire you and your children today. Well, here we go with another story, The Shadow Giants. If you are all comfortable, then I will begin. Once upon a time, a long time ago, in the land of the Oak and Eagle Kingdom, in the land of the Eastern Eagle, there was a small village. There were small giants. There was a small giants village which sat at the edge of the magical forest. A small group of giants lived very peacefully in this area. They were kind, they were gentle, yet their village did have a number of people that chose not to be kind. One thing that's very special about this small giants village is on the side of the village there were 3 large trees. These trees were so large that they were 99 years old. They were often called the Shadow Giants. These 3 trees would arc over the village, and it would allow people to find shade. Travelers would often rest in the Shadow Giants, and they were often known as trees that gave comfort, hope, and rest to travelers and villagers. So, each tree was named Comfort, Hope, and Rest. One day, a very old man came walking by. He too was 99 years of age, and he saw 3 shadow giants. He stopped, rested, and then he remembered a story from his childhood. The story was that when he was to turn 100, the shadow giants would turn into human beings and become part of the land. However, the story went that they were to be cared for and spoken to when people were around, because what would happen is they would turn into the people that spoke to them. It was very important then for people to speak positively and kindly about and to these trees. They were to be nurtured and cared for. And if they were, then at the 100-year point, they would turn into human beings that were kind and comforting and caring. However, if they were around people that were unkind, that were angry, who chose to use words that were hurtful, and they made unwise decisions, such as hurting the trees would then turn into human beings that would do the same. The old man remembered it was very important to make sure they were nurtured and cared for. The elderly man faintly remembered the story and traveled into the small giant's village and met the king. He said to the king, "I turn 100 in 6 months, and in 6 months I truly believe these shadow giants called Comfort, Hope, and Rest will turn into human beings. They will become alive. They will wander the land of the Oak and Eagle Kingdom. Perhaps they may not even turn into human beings. Maybe they will turn into a different type of being. But I know they will turn into living creatures. I urge you to select a couple of villagers in your small giant's village to look after these 3 trees and to tend to them for the next 6 months before they turn into beings. The king was surprised. He had never heard this story before, but he honored the elderly man in charge of seeing over these 3 trees. He said, "I will pick 3 people from my village to look after these 3 large shadow giants." The king went out into the village and he said, "Dear villagers, we have our 3 shadow giants. There are 3 trees called comfort, hope, and rest. They will eventually turn into beings. We want to make sure that they turn into healthy and nurtured human beings." So, a husband and wife approached the king and said, "We will take care of one of the shadow beings. I will take care for the tree up to noon. And when the shadow is cast on the east, my husband will take care of the shadow of the tree when the shadow is cast to the west," said the wife. The king agreed. "Yes, I will allow this to happen. I will give you comfort, the tree called comfort." The next tree was given to a priest, and that tree was called hope. The priest was very religious, and he said, "I would like to take care of one of the shadow giants." The king said, "Oh, of course, we will give you hope." And he said, "How are you going to take care of the people in your church?" said the king. The priest answered, "I will take care of the service in the evening when the sun sets," he said. That very moment, the priest's brother, who was known throughout the land to be a thief, spoke up. "I would like to join my brother, and I will take care of the shadow giant. May I take care of the third one, called rest?" I would like to take care of one of the shadow giants. The king responded and turned to the thief. He said, "Thief, I will not let you have your own tree, but I will let you share your brother's tree. The priest will do the morning, and the thief will do the afternoon." "We don't know if we can trust you, thief, but your brother will be able to work with you." And so they both went away, knowing that they would be sharing the tree, and that tree was called hope. There was one tree left. That last tree was by itself. A young boy who was the age of 10 stepped up. "I would like to look after the shadow giant." The king said, "You are very young. How are you going to look after a shadow giant?" His mother stepped up and said, "I will take care of the tree until noon, and then my son will take care of it after, and we will take care of it together." The 6 people departed and chose for the next 6 months to devote their lives to the 3 large shadow giants. The first shadow giant was taken care of by the husband and wife. This shadow giant was called comfort. At times the husband would get frustrated because he did not like his work, and he'd often get back from work angry. He would come to the shadow giant, and he would be angry at the shadow giant. He would bang his fists against the trunk, and he would push his feet against the roots. The husband and wife would constantly argue, and the wife would come to the tree angry in the morning. The wife eventually could not tend to the tree anymore, even though she was loving and caring. The husband was loving and caring too, but both of them were tired and upset, and their expectations of life was a disappointment because they felt very unhappy about where they were. The shadow giant named Comfort would remain there for 2 months, No longer had the wife and husband had visited. For 2 months it would sit randomly, and some people would come up. Then, towards the end of the 6 months, the husband would come and he'd start crying because he could not have his wife around him anymore. He was ill in bed. She was sad, and she was upset because her and her husband would not get along. Sometimes she would come to the tree and tears would fall on the trunk of the tree. So both of them, even though they started the 6 months, hoping that things would go well, both of them were angry at the beginning, then departed and left for 2 months, and then in the end, they both were crying and sad at the base of the tree. The second shadow giant was being taken care of the brothers, the religious man and the thief. The thief had realized he was wrong, and he had a soft heart, and he asked for forgiveness from all the people he had harmed. When he asked his religious brother for forgiveness, the brother said no, and he said, "You will be a thief and always a thief in my eyes." See, both of the brothers were hurt deeply, but one chose to forgive, the other one chose not to forgive. They would often have these conversations by the tree. The thief saying, "I am forgiven, and I did wrong, but I'm ready to make a better life for myself." And the other brother, who was angry and held resentment and unforgiveness, would often say, "You will always be a thief, you made a mistake, and you will always be a mistake." The angry brother used shame as a tool to protect himself. Often, the religious brother would talk about the mistakes of his other brother that was a thief. And the thief at the trunk of the tree would often say, "I am sorry. I want to help other people. I was wrong, but I'm working on it." He was still feeling shame, and that shame turned to forgiveness after he empathized with his religious brother. However, that was not the same with his religious brother. See, the religious brother was very honored in his community. Often he was very prideful, and he thought that everyone should regard him as the highest authority in his community. He would often sit at the tree and boast about the good things that he's done. And he would talk about how his brother, the thief, had done many bad things. He would talk about his glowing, beautiful clothes and his robes and the money that he was given as being a priest. And he was able to create many beautiful things of wealth and purchase gold for his rings and bracelets and jewelry that would adorn him while he was doing his services. He did not see that the money that used to buy his rich clothes to stand in front of his services could actually be used to feed the poor. His brother, on the other hand, the thief, was poor. He did not have much clothes. He was very sad and depressed. 6 months went by, and the third shadow giant was with the mother and the child. The mother loved the child very much, and the child loved the mother very much. Their tree was called Rest. The mother would often sit there, and she would talk about the beauty of nature and how glorious it was. Her heart was graceful. There would often be a soft breeze that would flow through the trees and cast the shadow on her. She fell in love with the trees. The boy in the afternoon was very grateful. He would talk about the beautiful birds that would find rest in the shadow giant's arms, and the beautiful sun and the beautiful village. He leaned into gratefulness, and after 6 months they all attended to their trees and did the best they could. What soon happened was the 100th day. The elderly man came back. He called everyone to the trees, and as the sun rose, 3 shadow giants changed and transformed into their caregivers. Their caregivers came from single trees, and yet their beings turned into them. The trees were now gone, and shadows were only left in their place. See, the elderly man didn't know what type of being they would turn into, but the trees turned into the shadows of their caregivers, shadow beings. The first one, although, was loved by the husband and wife, yet the husband and wife had strife and sadness and hurt and anger, and that continued for the 6 months. So the shadows that fell on the ground would often follow those people who were hurt and angry and had difficulty with communication. Instead of the shadow being called the comfort shadow, as it was called the comfort tree, it turned into the name the Sorrowful Shadow, and he would wander around the Oak and Eagle Kingdom, and he would fall upon the shadows of those that were in agony and despair because of relationships. Because the husband and wife, there were the next tree, the tree of hope, was the priest and the thief. This was a very interesting shadow, because what the shadow was is the shadow would often follow those people who were prideful, but yet it also followed people who were hopeful. See, there was pride in the religious man, and so that shadow would often follow those people who were prideful. But in the same regard, the thief was forgiven, and he felt forgiveness, and he was hopeful. So that shadow would often fall upon people's shadows that were hopeful. One thing that was so beautiful was that there was so much love and care from the thief, and that made a difference. The last tree, that was the tree of rest by the mother and the son, was a glorious one. It was filled with love, and that shadow being would cast a shadow on those people who were in love and that cared for nature and that were nurturing. See, their spirit of care and comfort and celebration and gratefulness continued to evolve even throughout their beautiful, beautiful shadow that would cast on the ground. In time, 3 shadow giants came to live in the village during the day when the sun was up, and then would disappear into the darkness at night. All 3 shadows grew in a deepness of care and kindness, compassion, and empathy. The small giant's village soon began to love their 3 shadow beings. There was so much hope and comfort and rest knowing that those were the 3 trees, and they transformed into shadows. See, they learned a lesson by caring for those 3 trees. They learned that by caring for nature and loving nature and speaking gratefulness about nature, that will transform your life when you're in the sunshine. Every time there was mourning or grief or happiness or kindness or care, you could see the shadow beings come out, and they would be within the shadows of all the different villagers in the small giant's village. The shadows became part of the villagers' lives. In years to come, 3 shadows came to be loved in the small giant's village because they helped others to connect to each other, whether it was through grief, through pride, through gratefulness, through kindness and care. And all 3 trees were missed. Those 3 trees, those 3 beautiful shadow giants of comfort, hope, and rest were no longer there. But the villagers chose that to replace those 3 trees that now became their shadows, they would plant more trees. And that's what they did. They planted more trees, and more trees, and more trees. And the villagers realized the importance of speaking truth and goodness and care and kindness to all these trees. And soon the king found that this was important. And whether these trees eventually turned into shadows of the villagers or not, he knew it was important. So he signed every single villager in the small giant's village a tree, and he encouraged them to speak kindness and love and care to each tree. And it grew and grew and grew, and these trees grew and grew and grew and provided shelter and comfort, calmness and love, as well as a place to remember the importance of speaking words of kindness. Thank you. Well, that was today's empathy tale. Truly trying to create compassion one story at a time. So, if you were to plant a tree, and you were to speak your regular words to those trees every single day, and when you're walking through your life, to have a tree in front of you, what shadow would it cast? What would happen to your words? Would they be kind, caring, empathetic? Would they be prideful, angry, rage? I don't know what it'd be. But today I hope that you remember that every single word that comes out of your mouth is truly a gift. And hopefully the words that come out of your mouth will be uplifting and caring and kind. And even though there might not be many people around, just know that nature is listening. And maybe one day, magically, just like in the small giant's village, maybe one of those trees will just disappear and become part of your shadow. A shadow of love, maybe a shadow of care and kindness. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's empathy tale. Thank you so much for listening. This is Victoria Wolders, and I hope that you have a lovely morning, afternoon, evening, night, and I hope that you tune in again to listen to another empathy tale. Until next time, I hope you create compassion one story at a time. Thank you.
3, 2, 1.